Hello, welcome to Hobby Chat with Adam's Hobby Stuff. And today I want to talk about airbrushing, specifically why I'm ordering my very first airbrush and some of my reasons and thoughts around the airbrushing process. And then at the end I'll show you what I've spent my hobby money on this week. So why have I never had an airbrush before? I've been doing this hobby for far too long now, 30 years-ish, and never owned one. I have used an airbrush before, and when I was a kid, my dad had an airbrush because he was into model railways and things. He still is. I had a go and it went horrifically wrong, like it would when you're a small child and you have a go at trying something like that. And it really kind of sort of put me off. A group of friends have used airbrushes and it's something that I've been encouraged to buy before and just kind of really avoided it. A few years ago, or 6 or 7 maybe, a group of friends and I were doing a big bolt action tank war campaign, and one of the guys involved bought an airbrush at that point and experimented and played with it. It took him weeks to actually spray a tank, but when he did, brought in 6 or 7 fabulously painted German tanks. And that, again, at that point, I very nearly got one. I think it was an Iwata he had at the time, and he still uses, I don't know if it's the same one. This is a chap who runs my local gaming store, which is Grim Dice over in Grimsby, and he's in his shop. He's got set up a little portable spray booth near the till, and he's got his airbrush in there and he airbrushes, in the shop. Whereas I, for years and years, have used these things. So rattle cans, and I've just got 3 types of rattle cans here. I'm just showing you 3 that I've just grabbed out of a box. I do have 10 or 12 in there. And they've got their advantages, their disadvantages. I'll go through the disadvantages first. They're smelly. I've found, particularly, in winter or whatever, it's horrible going outside and spraying and doing that. And then even when you've sprayed outside, you bring your models in and your models will smell of the propellant that are in these cans. That's a drawback. This time of year, especially when it's really freezing cold, and maybe it's raining, whatever, sometimes you can't undercoat your projects because it's so cold and wet outside. And that's been a drawback for years, but I've kind of avoided it because of the simplicity of you buy a can of spray. Now, this is a brand I've used before, and this isn't a review of the brand. This is just what I bought recently. Now, I bought this because, again, my local gaming store was out of the Army Painter and the Citadel stuff, and this is what they had. And actually, it's a very, very good spray. Colour Forge, I've seen a few of their bits coming round. I've bought their green stuff, actually seems like quite a decent brand. But you're limited to the availability, I guess, is a drawback of using rattle cans. If your rattle can runs out, which this did 2 days ago, while I was undercoating some scenery, it ran out. Thankfully, it ran out right at the end of the undercoating process. So that's another drawback to rattle cans. What's the advantage? Advantages, I suppose, are that they're easy to use. You buy it, to clean it, you turn it upside down and spray the nozzle and clear the air out, that kind of thing. You're not investing a huge amount of money. These are 10 quid, and they're fairly easy to pick up, generally available, apart from obviously some supply issues we have now. And they come in a multitude of colours. So this is an army green one that I've had for a few years actually. Bought it for doing bolt action figures mostly, and again, good range, and this has sat there for years. So there's advantages, disadvantages. Now, the main reason I want to swap to ordering an airbrush or getting into airbrushing is the ecological reason. So, this last year I've got myself a hybrid car. My old car reached the end of its lifespan. Got a new one, bought a new car, went for a hybrid. Tax reasons partly as well, but also the ecological factor. Obviously, it's the way the world's going, it's how we're moving. I've recently got a watch that's got recycled plastic in the dial. Life is becoming more and more about not putting things like this in the ground, not putting plastics in the ocean, etc. So, in theory, having an airbrush will mean I can use less plastics, use less metal, have less of an ecological impact, and I like the idea of that. Cost-wise, I'm guessing, and this is guesswork here, I go through maybe 16 or 17 cans of black spray a year. So about 170 quid, roughly. The airbrush I'm picking up, which I'll flash up now, is about 40 quid. And I'm assuming that actually undercoating and using it that way will be cheaper than buying rattle cans. So a couple of reasons, ecological and price. And it seems like a good opportunity. Now I've run out of some black. I've undercoated my current project, so I've got time for what I've ordered to arrive. Seems like a good time to do it. Now, which one have I ordered? So it's just a very simple battery-powered plug-in airbrush. Now, I've ordered this one because I've watched a couple of reviews online, I've read a few pieces, and it seems like, well, 1, it's cheap. 2, it seems fairly decent. it seems like a good experiment. If I don't enjoy it, I don't enjoy the airbrush process, you know, I've not wasted a huge amount of money, because obviously I don't know if I can do things like spray out metal paints through it, whether the impact will be the same. You know, what I don't want to do, I suppose, is when I run out of lead belcher, I don't want to go and buy another can of lead belcher because I can't spray through it. So a cheap, simple airbrush seems like the way to go. If any of you guys have ever used the one that I've just shown, tell us what your thoughts were. Is it good? Is it worth doing? So I really want to experiment, and it is going to be for purely base coating purposes. I really like the idea that I can, you know, base coat my models in the garage and not make the garage absolutely stink, you know, when it's raining or whatever outside. And I do, one of my other very expensive hobbies is I like cycling, and I really don't like the idea of having all of the horrible dust from these things settling onto my bikes, because, you know, you don't want to ruin a £2,000 bike for just because you're spraying some toy soldiers. So I think there's a few benefits, but obviously I'm going to have to play and experiment. I realise I might have to buy like a little fume cupboard and things for the airbrush, but I like the idea I can use it inside in any weather. I like the idea that it's not going to stink out the room that I use it in, and it's not going to, you know, stink out things there. I think there's a lot of benefits. The ecological side, I think, is a real big win. So I'm going to try. I'm going to see, and I'll feed it back to you here. But thought it was worth talking about. Why? Because it's a bit of a seismic shift for me to buy an airbrush as someone who's resisted for 30 years in the hobby. Now, you never know, I might go down the rabbit hole. It might end up being the next big thing. Who knows? So that's kind of some thoughts and ramblings as to why I've ordered this specific airbrush. You know, if you think, oh, I've made a huge mistake and that was a terrible one to have picked and ordered and it was an absolute disaster, well, it's on its way. So, you know, if you think I've made a massive mistake, tell me. I can always cancel it. I can always order a new one, and we'll see how it goes. So, what do I spend my hobby money on this week? Obviously, I'm ordering the airbrush. That's a junk, and I found something quite interesting. I've talked about in a previous video, if I just dig out my little brush pot to the side here, how one of my favourite brushes was this boy here. This is a set of Citadel Masters brushes that I bought a number of years ago. Came in a really nice box. I've had it for a long time. And this brush destroyed itself finally after about 15 years of ownership when I was doing my Nurgle Army last year, and the tip just isn't there, and it's dead. Now, I came across this thing, Green Stuff World. If you've watched my channel a lot, you'll know I love the Green Stuff World products, and they do this brush repair gel. So I picked some of this up, and I'm going to see if I can rescue my Citadel Masters brush that I've had for years. You know, it's only a couple of quid. We'll see how it goes. Not used it yet. So that's what I've spent my hobby cash on this week. So there's another ramble. I hope my reasons for picking up an airbrush for the first ever time make some sort of sense. Again, comment down below if you like that airbrush, if you've had bad experiences with it, what your thoughts on airbrushing are. But for me, like I said, several reasons. Bit about price, a lot about ecological, and ease of use, and I don't have to go out in the freezing cold and the rain to undercoat our models. Alright, hope you enjoyed that. Like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz, and I'll see you on another video.